On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy announced before a special joint session of Congress his ambitious goal of sending an American safely to the moon before the end of the decade. In a time filled with growing ignorance and technological power, the U.S. was locked in a Cold War with the USSR as the world's two dominating powers battled for control of the Earth and the stars. It was Kennedy who said,
"We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too."
And America, a country based on freedom and the ability to accomplish what others deem impossible, came through on its promise. The space race served as a catalyst that shot most of America's ideals and intentions upward. In 1969, the moon landing was seen as an end of an era of great American accomplishments and national pride. But now it is serving as the beginning of something new. It was, in fact, the years following the space race that changed the U.S.'s view of the moon because of the opportunities that arose, which suggested that the moon had something more to offer. The space race officially began October 4, 1957, when the USSR announced it had launched Sputnik, the first man-made satellite into Earth's orbit. Up until that point, the US was locked in a battle with the USSR over who was the world's leading power post-World War II. Both countries tried to outdo the other, launching them into a back-and-forth situation. The USSR sent the first satellite into space, which was followed by the US sending the first organisms into space. The USSR sent the first man into space, while the US put a man on the moon. It was through those technological innovations that not only the US and the USSR learnt more about each other's capabilities, but more about the moon itself. When Apollo 11 brought back samples of rock taken from the moon, high concentrations of helium-3 was found in the lunar soil. Helium-3 is a gas that has the potential to be used as fuel in future nuclear power plants. One of the problems associated with using helium-3 is that the isotope is very rare on Earth. While helium-3 is produced as a byproduct of the maintenance of nuclear weapons, it's also emitted by the sun within its solar winds. The Earth's atmosphere is too dense to allow any helium-3 to reach the surface, but because the moon does not have an atmosphere, there's nothing to stop helium-3 from being absorbed by the lunar soil. As a result, it has been estimated that there is more than 1 million metric tons of helium-3 on the surface of the moon. Helium-3 is a remarkably clean fuel source that has the potential to replace uranium in nuclear fusion while substantially cutting back on harmful byproducts. The U.S. relies on nuclear power to supply 1/5 of its total energy supply, which contributes to a staggering 20% of the world's total nuclear energy production. By utilizing helium-3, the U.S. could substantially cut back on its demand for uranium and lead the country towards becoming a frontrunner in the international supply of helium-3. Not only increasing the U.S.'s global power, but also boosting its economy via the moon's assets. During his administration, President George W. Bush focused more time and funds on the further study of the moon, and in 2006, Bush's science advisor John Marburger articulated the president's vision. Quote, "As I see it, the question boils down to whether we want to incorporate the solar system into our economic sphere or not," unquote. And that seems to be exactly where the U.S. is heading. If America ever wants to see its dreams of incorporating the solar system into our economic sphere, it'll have to do so with global aid. The immediate support would be from Russia. Since Vladimir Putin's rise to power at the end of the 1990s, Moscow's pursued a policy aimed at regaining the degree of power it enjoyed during the Cold War. While Russia pursues a stricter space policy, it understands that it cannot exclude other powers in the region such as the European Union and Turkey, but especially China and the United States. While the U.S. does not seek to control the moon, it has been 40 years since American feet have last touched lunar soil. Recently, President Barack Obama canceled plans for a manned mission to the moon as part of the downsizing of NASA and the outsourcing of further space missions to Russia. When the presidential candidate Newt Gingrich suggested committing U.S. resources to settlement of the moon, it was very nearly the end of his political career. But the ambition America lacks, China has threefold. In 2011, Beijing announced plans to put a man on the moon by 2020, and its space agency had publicly suggested establishing a, quote, base in the moon as we did in the South Pole and North Pole, unquote. Washington, D.C. has given little thought to the possibility that once a permanent settlement is established, Beijing might seek to assert extraterrestrial territory sovereignty, declaring the moon's surface part of Chinese territory. The idea isn't as crazy as it sounds. During the Cold War, the possibility of countries claiming territory on the Moon or other planets was considered realistic enough that the 1967 Outer Space Treaty was enacted to prevent it. The treaty claims that neither the Moon nor celestial bodies may be claimed by any person, business, or government. If China were tempted to seize the Moon, such a move would be a game-changer for international security. The claim would invite competition beyond the Earth's orbit that would alter global politics as dramatically as the 1957 launch of Sputnik. The US worries that once China makes a permanent settlement on the Moon, competition for celestial dominance will arise. America and China will have to compete for resources as they expand further into space while battling the legal consequences taking claim to territory. International occupation could lead to further debate as to which country, if any, has legal claim to the Moon. So it begs the question, who really owns the Moon? As of the moment, no country has claimed the Moon, but a new market has risen as people from all around the globe are participating in a mad dash to sell lunar property. The biggest lunar real estate salesman is Dennis Hope, an American. Some people view the business of space real estate as the selling of novelty items, such as pet rocks and certificates, while others argue that he is taking forth in the age-old American tradition of land speculation. Hope acknowledges that there are several others selling property in outer space, but the difference in these people and himself is that they're doing it without the law on their side. Hope considers himself the legitimate owner of the Moon because he sent a letter to the UN stating if they had a problem with his claim, they should let him know. Needless to say, they didn't respond. Dennis asserts that his claim is entirely possible through a legal loophole with the 1979 Moon Agreement. Hope claims that the agreement failed to collect the necessary signatures to be ratified. As incorrect as Hope may be, he's already sold several billion acres of Moon property. Americans are fascinated with the prospect of owning a piece of the Moon, something their forefathers fought for and won. If Hope's claims hold up in court, it could give anyone legal access to the Moon and the ability to control their property. The biggest idea addressed is the prospect of lunar colonization. The creation of a lunar society could give man the possibility to colonize Mars or even further into space. Instead of a dense rock that looms in the sky, the world could come to view the Moon as home to relatives, friends, or quite possibly an extension of America itself. It is impossible to know where the Moon will lead us. It was Kennedy who said,
This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. New ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward.
Americans will watch and wait as the global events unfold before them. Whether it's the possibility for a greener future or a grayer one, things can only go up, and the sky is no longer the limit.